Well, first and foremost, it's a great pleasure to be here at this very, very interesting summit. And it's an even greater pleasure to be huddled with our minister, Nirmala Sitharaman. You said that, in terms of our share of the global trade, we only account for 2%. And in terms of our GDP share, manufacturing accounts for probably around 14 to 15%. And in terms of the formal employment share, I think, as you know, manufacturing only accounts for 10%. The aspiration of the government certainly is to increase this GDP share to 25% and the employment share to 20%. Now, one of the things that I've always wondered is that we need to look at the 25 manufacturing sectors that you talk about. I have no doubts about it that in terms of investment and investment dollars, we are going to do extremely well. But when it comes to this aspirational roadmap of 10 to 20% of formal employment, I do worry about generating the kind of jobs in direct manufacturing because of the kind of sophistication that is entering into the manufacturing sector. There is a lot of automation. So even companies like ours, we have seen a steady decline in the number of actual manufacturing jobs that are being created as we get into the next expansion and the next expansion, largely because of automation. Having said that, I think supply chain is another part of that manufacturing ecosystem, which certainly also employs jobs. How are we going to really create those manufacturing jobs in the context of automation? And should we not, therefore, then be thinking of jobs, shouldn't we be thinking of manufacturing, not just about the numbers of jobs that we are creating, but the share that manufacture has in GDP?
I think we understand very clearly in the context of automation, in the context of discussions which are happening on Industrial Revolution 4.0, I suppose different countries look at it differently. Even then, you're right. Today, the understanding of a job cannot be like the way it was in the 50s or 60s, where there is a big factory and people go in numbers and produce something and come out and therefore say, I'm employed. The nature of what is constituting work is also getting redefined. Whilst many of the traditionally defined jobs will still continue, but the numbers of those jobs which can be along with automation will have to be understood, and therefore to that extent we'll have to ready ourselves out for that. And in fact in Davos I heard a very interesting expression which I'm sure many of you all are familiar with. We had this only two distinct categories of blue-collared workers or, white-collared workers. In the context of the Industrial Revolution 4.0, we are hearing of new-collared workers. No color distinction, because what you do with the knowledge base, what you do when you're talking about the robotics, is you need somebody who's going to be intelligent and smart enough, skilled enough to be able to train, but at the same time work in a monotonous but robotic situation. So that's one thing said. The other, you also cannot deny the fact that the continuation of such jobs which we are familiar with will have to happen in India, because you still have demand for such jobs, whether I look at even road laying, highway development, where the techniques of laying roads, techniques of building, structures are all changing with instant prefabricated material and so on. Even then, you would need a certain number of semi-skilled workers there. So for India, Industrial Revolution 4.0 notwithstanding, we'll still need a lot of adaptation to this country. We're not looking at bulk jobs of a certain category to meet the numbers, but we are certainly looking at different types of jobs which are needed for a rapidly changing environment in certain sectors and some others not rapidly but yet changing environment.
Right now, we are only accounting for 2% of the value add in terms of global trade. And I guess that should be a metrics that needs to be raised quite significantly. Because if you look at China, it is 12%. And, when you look at even other countries like South Korea, it is, 4 and 5%. So I suppose we also have to fix a metrics in our Make in India strategy in terms of how much more we can add to that value add.
Yes, whilst not denying that, and I understand the importance that the global value chain argument holds out for us. Every time there is a comparison on this score with China, I look at it with a bit of a hesitation, because China, after a 30-year period of looking at export-driven economy, today is looking at consumption reorientation. India, whether by choice or by default setting, has been where it has been. And probably today, I would want to see it as an advantageous position where you're really not throwing yourself only to be export dependent. However, even export, we have not exploited as much as we should. But the Indian market has been probably overlooked. They have been overlooked because many things which we are exporting, probably many other parts of India don't buy from our own manufacturers. And for which, of course, the geography of the country, the terrain, the logistics, and the cost of infrastructure things, whether it is electricity or anything else, shipping, have all been constraints for us to sell to our own market. And today, the emphasis of the government is make sure that electricity reaches everywhere, logistics costs come down, your own apples can reach every part of the country, rather than because the south being in the south, you don't buy your Himachali apple. And as a result, it is cheaper, and I've heard this argument several times, it's cheaper for you to get your wheat from Australia or Canada or apples from Australia or Canada, only because, not that we don't grow enough apples in this country or wheat in this country, but logistics literally doesn't make it competitive for us. So there are aspects which we have to look at in even value-added products to reach the different parts of this country, first of all, which will have a bearing on the import and reduction in import, which I would so desire.
We still remain 130 in terms of the our rankings in the global index of ease of doing business out of 189 countries. And I myself know that in the pharmaceutical sector, one of the biggest challenges that we face, because this is a very important sector that has a huge growth potential, it is very firmly rooted in manufacturing, and yet I feel that we are not unleashing the full potential of manufacturing in pharmaceuticals because of the very complex regulation that we have to face. We have multiple ministries regulating us. It could be very easily simplified, but there are problems, there are challenges, there are political compulsions, and I'm sure many other sectors face the same kind of issues. How do we basically free up this system by making sure that every manufacturing sector has a nodal ministry that it deals with for everything?
I must underline the fact here that as regards the ranking, we've had this discussion with the World Bank once or twice. Well, their methodology is something which all of us will have to accept and respect. They only survey Mumbai and Delhi. That's not to say that Mumbai and Delhi are not reforming themselves, but reforms which are happening at a faster pace elsewhere. Say, I'm sure Karnataka is going also ahead with a lot of work in terms of simplifying processes and reaching out to manufacturers to say how best things can be worked in their favor and so on. Those don't get captured at all. So whilst I want to keep the World Bank's ranking as a challenge before me, which I need to address, it's also true for a large country with so much diverse, different governments, diverse resources, and approaches to reform. The World Bank ranking probably doesn't really capture it.
I'd also like to ask you another very interesting trend that we're seeing. For instance, I think India has done very well in the automobile sector. We've seen a lot of overseas companies come and make big investments, very successful investments, and they've had a good payback in terms of setting up their automobile manufacturing units in India, like Toyota and many other, Ford and many other companies. And of course, we've had Maruti, and of course, Tatas have also benefited from the automobile sector and so on and so forth. But we are also now seeing a very interesting emergence of interest in, the mobile phone industry. You've seen Lenovo, announcing that it's going to set up a manufacturing unit in near Chennai. Apple is going to set it up near Bangalore, and so on and so forth. How do we make sure that the various ease of doing business aspects are focused in such a way that we get a huge amount of manufacturing opportunities in some of these emerging areas? That's one question. And the second is, I personally believe that for a country like India, there are two big opportunities in terms of equitable economic development. One is, of course, creating physical infrastructure, which will, of course, create lots of jobs. And I think, we are seeing that the Transport Ministry is doing extremely well in terms of, building 130 kilometers of roads every day. And I know that there's a lot of other emphasis on infrastructure. But I think we have an even bigger opportunity in creating a huge digital marketplace, which, as you know, is something that we are all now very excited about. But in order to do that, actually, there are lots of manufacturing opportunities. It is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to just happen. But we need a strategic focus, a strategic intent, which really links up the 200 urban growth centers with the rural hinterland. How do we make sure that we get every state government focused on a very unified approach in terms of regulations, in terms of policies, so that we can actually make all this happen? Because this is a huge manufacturing opportunity.
This is one big area in which investments are coming in a very big way. Production has already started. Glad to say that the Finance Ministry has addressed every one of the inverted duty related issues, because majority of the mobile manufacturing companies which are coming in are raising one or the other issue related to component import versus the finished products import costs, where it becomes cheaper for you to import the manufactured final good rather than get the component. These kind of anomalies are all being looked at, and the Finance Ministry since 2014 budget has made it a point to say, look, anywhere, anytime you have an inverted duty structure problem, please address, we will immediately address, and they are doing that. And that has also partly helped the mobile manufacturers who are coming in. You've taken the names of big companies. There are definitely a lot of them who are coming in, not just for the mobile manufacturing. Today there's interest also to shift a lot of hardware related manufacturing from China, from Taiwan and so on cost reasons, on account of costs going up. A wage component may not be that big a component in the increase, but for various reasons, on also probably getting closer to their market, they would like to, many of these manufacturers would like to shift it from China or Taiwan to India. And we are constantly meeting with them and talking, and they have moved ahead, moved forward on telecom, hardware, electronics manufacturing. And as regards a strategic approach for it, unified approach, how states are responding, I am glad to say states are now desperately wanting, if it is there, why not us? What is less in us, tell us. We will try to also overcome those difficulties so that that production which happens in our state can next happen in our place. Nobody wants to deny the other state, but they want to also, move or invite some of these investments to their own states. So there is a fairly healthy competition. No state is upset with us saying, oh, see, because of this particular hurdle in your state, people wouldn't want to come in. They don't probably openly admit it, but they go back to redress it. And that I find is a very healthy sign, as a result of which there is rapid change in the way in which investors are looking. Earlier, in the first year or even in the second year, we had investors coming and saying we would want to go to A, B, C, let's say the 3 states about which they've heard. Today they're open-minded. They are quite willing to go and recce other states where they would invest and produce, and some of which are paying off. And therefore I think, as regards states, it's good news. There is not going to be one laggard state as regards ease of doing business.
I'd like to ask you many more questions, but I think we're running out of time. So I'd like to open it up for Q&As. Please put up your hand, introduce yourself, and ask the question. Thank you.
We have got a very adverse balance of trade with China. But still we are importing cheap goods, toxic goods, toys, plastic, crackers, which have absolutely low technology items. Why are we still doing it? I can understand if there is certain core competency with China and we don't have to reinvent the wheel ourselves. But these cheap goods coming into us and giving them a very favorable balance of trade, don't you feel there is some contradictions?
If crackers are coming into this country from China, it's illegal. 100% illegal. There are no permissions given. Cracker or firecrackers, explosives, these are completely restricted items. Restricted, when I say, I mean without explicit license being obtained, no one can import. And I can tell you, in the last 3 years, we have not given one license to anybody to import from nowhere in this world they can import. But and I'm aware, every year this is a big issue because the manufacturers, particularly from Shivakasi in Tamil Nadu, would say, look, it's a cottage industry, we'll lose all our employee base, and that contributes because Shivakasi is a fairly dry area and no other employment is available there. Every year from June, they would start telling me, oh, I'm sorry, this many number of containers have come into the country. Every one consignment, therefore, if it has come into this country, is illegal. We have not given permission to import. So let this be clear, there is no permission given for importing crackers, first. Second, toxic things, toxic toys, plastic toys, if they are with toxic material, they cannot be. We use the standards and stop those items. In this, users, consumers, importers, all of them will have to tell us, look, this is happening, would you do? I can't initiate on the assumption that every toy which comes from a particular country is toxic and stop every toy coming from there. But if it has got something to tell me that it is containing toxic material, yes, I can. For all other items, import will be coming in as long as you yourself said, there is some kind of a competitive edge. If it is cheaper, people are going to not produce it here, get it from there. But if I have to stop it because of the adverse balance of trade position with that particular country, I need to have measures. I need to have standards to tell me, look, what is coming is poor standard, or it is risky or safety, and I can stop it. But I can't stop it just because people are buying it because it is cost competitive. And for establishing standards, a lot of work is going on now. I couldn't have believed this, but now I can say with a certain authority, and therefore I believe it. It might be difficult for others. For many things in India, there are no established standards. And when we try establishing standards, talking to the concerned ministries, there are industries themselves who come and say, no, please don't do it, please. We can't. Our costs will go up if you impose this kind of standard on us. So we are in a situation where we are trying to reform, we are trying to change, we are trying to improve, but in the meanwhile, also face the flood of imports.
I'd like to really thank Nirmala Sitharaman ji, and thank you very much.
Thank you.